welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 379 for the 24th of January 2016. Richard Saunders here with you from muggy, overcast and muggy Sydney, Australia. And it's muggy. Did I say it was muggy? Coming up on this week's show, a special report, and for me, what a pleasure it was, a special report. I go to the Powerhouse Museum here in Sydney and have a lovely tour of a new exhibition. Well, an exhibition's been on for a little while now with Tilly Boleyn and Frankie Lee. Now, they were gracious enough to give me a guided tour of the Recollect Health and Medicine exhibition. Now, this is a fascinating exhibition at the Powerhouse Museum where they have brought up a lot of the stored items they have that never really see the light of day when it comes to medical history. And what a collection they have, including, I'm very pleased to say, some things that I've donated to the exhibition by way of quack products. Quackery! Candles. And lots of other things. So coming up at the top of the show, join me and Tilly and Frankie as we wander around this exhibition. And if you're in Sydney or you're coming to Sydney over the next couple of months, I can really recommend visiting the Powerhouse Museum, very easy to find, and having a look at this exhibition. Following that, it's a week in science from the Royal Institution of Australia, www.riaus.org.au. And then I'll report on a recent development here to do with something called Psychic TV. Psychic TV. A show that emanates from Sydney, and there's been some controversy as reported in the newspapers today. We'll get to that a bit later in the show. There is a lot of news about it at the moment, with the Chiropractic Board of Australia under investigation and criticism. There's more fallout due to the seemingly ridiculous PhD awarded by the University of Wollongong to an anti-vaxxer. And we're not forgetting Mark Zuckerberg and the fallout from him posting a picture of his daughter at the doctor waiting to get her vaccination. But they might have to wait till next week. But that's enough for me at the moment. I'm going to run downstairs, open up the fridge and dive into the freezer, shut the door and have a root beer. While I'm doing that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Wonderful atmospheric tones of a museum, and we are at the Powerhouse Museum here in Sydney, Australia. This has been a place of pilgrimage for me for many years. I come here to do the Mystery Investigators show, but apart from that, I love to come here regardless. I'm very lucky today to be in the company of two eminent people. Who do we have here and what's your position?
Hi, I'm Tilly Boleyn. I'm the Health and Medicine Curator at the Powerhouse Museum.
What an interesting job. What an interesting job.
Very interesting.
And we have...
Hi, I'm Frankie Lee, and I work as one of the producers of the Sydney Science Festival.
Another great job.
A great job.
I'm very jealous. So we're here at the Powerhouse Museum today, and we're going to be looking through an exhibition which has been running for a few months and has got a few more months to run.
Indeed it has. It's called Recollect Health and Medicine, and it's the 6th in our Recollect series, which is a way that the museum tackles a problem that all big institutions have, in that we have 500,000 objects. But at any one time, only 2 or maybe 3% of them are actually available for people to look at. So recollects are a way that we can quite quickly rotate large amounts of objects around a particular theme so that our visitors can come and see, study and enjoy them more regularly.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so this particular exhibition is on all of our, It's a section of our health and medicine collection. There are more than 2,000 objects, and I thought that we could go through and just touch on a few of my favourites.
So we're starting our little walk. Now, we're in the lower level of the museum, and it's a massive museum, I must say.
Yeah.
It's massive, and it's like it's got that true museum feel about it, hasn't it?
Thank you. Yes, it does. That's what comes with awesome objects populated throughout a building.
And we're looking at some now, but they're only photographs so far.
Yeah, so this entry into the Recollect is to really try to reinforce to people that it's visible collection storage. What that means is we are taking these objects out of the collection store and we're putting them on display in pretty much the same way that we store them. So it's a way of really quickly and without much money being able to really rotate objects inside the museum. So as we see the big objects down the gallery that we'll go and have a look at, they're not on beautiful fancy plinths. What they're on is the actual crates that we store them on. So it gives you a little snapshot into how we store objects, and these photographs on the wall show you how they're genuinely stored in our collection.
And they're life-size.
Yeah, they're life-size.
So, as we look at the photographs on the wall here, they're high-detailed, high-res, I guess you'd call them, life-size. So this is exactly what I'd see in the storage.
That's right. So you walk through rows and rows and rows of these compactuses where all our treasures are stored.
Treasures.
Yeah.
Let's walk down the corridor here, the hallway. Hello. These people they're not looking well at all. We've got some cross sections of human heads here. Oh.
Yeah, so this particular cabinet is about conserving objects and about the sort of troubles that a museum runs into. So we've got 4 different heads here, and each of them has had different wear and tear based on what material they're made out of. So we start off with this skull here.
Yeah.
And tell me what you see on the top of the skull. Anything unusual?
Well, they're slightly discoloured, but I'm seeing lots of little black dots.
Yeah, they're actually holes. They're insect borer holes.
What?
Because that's made out of paper mache. And so hopefully before it came to us rather than after. I think it was before. This would have been a teaching tool in a university, say.
Right.
And it has been lived in by some insects. So that's one of the things that a museum needs to make sure that we keep all of our stores and our museum buildings insect-free.
Wow.
The next one along, it's half actual skull, and then it's got plastics. Yeah, the skull bit.
Let's walk around the other side of the cabinet here. We could. Oh my goodness me!
I know,
it's like Indiana Jones. And
it's slightly terrifying.
It's slightly terrifying.
Zombie walk.
So we've got real skull, but then we've got plastics and wire in red and in blue to show veins and arteries running up the face and the skull. And we've got plastic teeth, and some of these have degraded. They all degrade differently over time. And so...
Don't we all?
So true. And so we have a whole department of people in the museum called the conservators. Their sole job is to try and keep all of our objects up to the standard that they came to us in.
Right.
So because when we take an object into the museum, what we're committing to is keeping that object in perpetuity.
Of course.
Forever.
Of course, yes.
This next one, again, paper mache, but
lovely. Very well done.
Massive crack through the skull is not meant to be there.
Yes,
so that's come from temperature variation when it was being stored. It would have heated up and cooled down, and over time, over decades, that happened. So
beautiful. It's a beautiful rendering now. I'll just come around the other side of the cabinet once again. It's so well done for paper mache. I'm quite surprised.
Yeah, we have some absolutely gorgeous paper mache models. They are stunning. There's a heart that will take your heart away. And the last one
poor
is,
guy here, what's his story?
Well, he's real. So that's a real human skull, and that degrades in a different way, but certainly not as much as paper mache. It's not as in danger of insect population.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has its own concerns that we need to ensure that we're keeping it in a really stable environment, which we do over in our collection store, which is under the next building along, where it's all climate controlled, temperature controlled, insect controlled. So that's one theme. The next one we come along to is called Cut It.
Well, no wonder we're looking at folks, we're looking at huge glass cabinets in the middle of the room here. They extend on quite a bit. And on red sort of material going up about 8 or 9 feet, we have lots of, looks like antiquated surgical equipment. We have bone saws and faucets and all sorts of clamps and things like that.
And we also have an object that so myself and another curator were pulling together what objects would go on display here. And we were just having a look in the collection, immersed in objects, and I picked up one of these little suckers.
Yeah. They look like phasers from Star Trek almost.
Yeah. Oh, if only they were. The label read tonsil guillotine. Which made me... Exactly.
Oh, it made me.
It made me squeal a little bit.
A couple of thousand listeners just went, oh. Well.
But we have such a gorgeous array of the design changing over time. So these ones on display in the museum, they're just your type. They look a little bit like a gun, but you hook over the hole over the tonsil and then you guillotine. But then you look at development. Over time, they had 2 triggers, and the second triggers pulled out these little pincers that would grab onto the bit of flesh.
We're all wincing around here. It's amazing.
Well, it's just innovation in medical instrument making. It's
thank goodness
awesome.
for that.
And we've also got a trepanning tool here, which is the first type of operation that we've got evidence human beings survived after.
Is this a skull thing?
Yeah, it's like a hand-driven skull.
Yeah.
Screws into it
Yeah.
to make a hole thing.
That's right.
A hole in the skull.
Well, it was actually, before it was to access the brain, it was to relieve pressure or to release spirits, you know?
I
back
hate that
when
that
you
was
was
stuck in your skull. I hate that.
That's a real one. Well, that's
a real one.
Wow, that's so interesting.
And you're right about the antiquated. I mean, because centuries ago, many years ago, doctors would have artisans make up their toolkits and then they'd use them for the rest of their lives. Before we knew about sterilisation, before we knew about the germ theory, and we have some beautiful examples of boxes that
Just
doctors would have taken around.
Over here, doctors' boxes, goodness me, there's a saw there and there's all sorts of things.
Oh.
Lots of scissors and clamps and things like that. Wow.
Let's head on down. What a
collection. What a collection. It's a pity they're sort of locked away. They should... Oh, hello. I've never seen so many bottles of pills and potions in my life.
I think
goodness me. What do we have here? I have, yes.
This is our dispenser case. So this is where we're looking at all the wonderful glass bottles, containers, drugs, suppository formers, pill formers, scales, all the things that chemists use or sell, or when they used to be apothecaries and they used to and they used to make up their own drugs.
Bile beans?
Oh my goodness, such a good story here, Richard. You are going to love it. Bile beans was really popular, I think it was in the 1950s, in the United Kingdom and beyond, and the story attached to it was that this Australian scientist, looked around and noticed that Australian Aborigines never got sick, ever. And so he thought, well, I better find this secret. And he communicated with Aboriginal tribes and they told him their secret, which was this one particular Australian plant that meant that they were free from all illness. And he packaged that up into bile beans. And so it was this cure-all. Of course, got taken to court and was shown in the Supreme Court, or the highest court in the land, to be an absolute fraud. This Australian scientist that he claimed, of course, didn't exist. Of course, Australian Aborigines aren't illness-free and have this amazing... So it was just a beautiful example of complete pseudoscience when they were marketing a laxative pill. But it had a nice little Australian touch to the story.
It's folks, if you can picture in your mind something from your great-grandmother's cupboard here, lots of little bottles, like we said before, castor oil, there's aspirin bottles. It's something like out of the Wild West drugstore, I guess you'd say. It's fascinating.
And then we move on to the section where pharmacies started becoming more like what we'd know as a shopping centre. So it wasn't just your castor oils and your actual drugs, but they moved into selling nice soaps and ladies' lipstick and cosmetics. This is one object that really interested me. It's this beautiful ceramic jar that says leeches on the outside.
One says honey and one says leeches.
Yeah.
But they're gorgeous, aren't they?
They're gorgeous, but they're very ornate, and they came from a pharmacy. And the only leeches I knew at the time when I started this exhibition were the ones when you go bushwalking and they attach to your leg.
Yes.
I was like, why would anybody store leeches in that container? And so I called the Australian Museum, chatted to some leech experts over there, and I learned that there are two types of leeches. There are the terrestrial leeches that you get when you're bushwalking, and then there are aquatic leeches. Yeah. And aquatic leeches, so both of them have been in fads that come and go about bleeding, about all sorts of things. Leeches have been used for thousands of years with either evidence or no evidence. Yeah. So that over time they've been used to treat obesity, mental illness, balancing the humours, all of that complete bumpkus, of course. But they're actually still used in health and medicine today for actual reasons.
Yeah.
So mostly for microsurgery. So if you lose a finger or a nose, when they reattach it, sometimes there can be small pools of blood that gather just underneath that joint. And the best way to clear it out so that you're not going to... So you cause the least amount of damage to the muscle and the area around that is to pop a leech on. And they suck up the blood. They stimulate arterial growth back into the region. They're excellent. And so I somewhat stupidly talked the museum into allowing us to have live leeches, which are also in the exhibition.
Can't wait.
And my stupid idea means that I have to feed them.
Well, we'll get into that soon.
With her own blood.
With her own blood, yes. Coming up after the break, we wander a little bit further around this fascinating exhibition with Tilly and Frankie. We come across some quackery and discover some live leeches.
On maynard.com.au, it's
Bunga Bunga!
episode 21 with Tim Ferguson
And Maynard.
Ring the bell, do the thing, pull it on, and make the noise that goes... Show 21. With Tim's delicate condition, you have two enemies, late nights and heat. Is that correct?
That's right. Hot late nights, forget it.
Is that because it makes the brain go faster and the MS doesn't like that? What is it?
Well, what happens, I asked a neurologist, and she said what happens is, like anything, a brain expands in heat as well. And nerves expand in heat, so what happens is your nerves actually get bigger. Not huge, of course, but just that little difference. When you're dealing with nerves as stupid as my nerves, well, it's like dealing with people from North Queensland. And hello to all those listeners, hello to all those fans. But you know what I'm talking about.
Bunga bunga, or as we like to say, bunga bunga!
Bunga bunga.
On maynard.com.au. Hey, you!
Now, Tilly, this looks like something out of World War II. What's going on here?
This precious little thing is called the Torpedoette. It was developed in the 1950s here in Australia by the Australian Red Cross Blood Service, and Reverend John Flynn was involved as well, who created the Australian Flying Doctors. And what they were trying to address is that it's really hard in Australia because it's such a massive continent that it's hard to get medical supplies to people who are living remotely or rurally in Australia. And so this is the little sucker that they came up with to address that problem.
Oh, so this, it looks like a bomb.
Yeah.
With a parachute on it.
Yeah, so they designed it exactly like that. It's got a conical nose, it's about 2 foot long, and about 15, 20 centimetres in diameter. It's made out of cardboard, Richard. So you open up the top and you get 2 glass 1 litre jars of blood or plasma, and you wrap them in a blanket and you pop them in there with a diffusion kit, and then you chuck them out of a plane. And what they like, and I say that, but the ability to just chuck them out of a plane was really important to them, because they didn't want it to just be tied to military or people with special skills who knew how to chuck things out of a plane correctly. This torpedoette can be given to someone who's a hobby pilot, to someone who's a farmer and has a plane for irrigation, to anyone. It really meant that we could get medical supplies out quickly and without specialist training to people in really remote areas of Australia. It's an awesome innovation in medical instrument making.
Right. Oh, we'll walk down a little bit further now, past some skeletons and some more giant eyeballs and giant ears and all sorts of things. And on the other side of the room here is something of very, very particular interest to myself and Skeptic Zone listeners, I'm sure. We have an actual iron lung.
Yeah, well, actually, this is the Australian iron lung, which is even cooler than the actual iron lung. So, the iron lung was invented and developed in America, but it truly was, it lived up to its name. It was huge. It was heavy. It took up entire wings, like large spaces in hospitals, and could only be on the bottom floor because it was so heavy.
Right.
And that meant that part of the hospital was your iron lung in perpetuity. These Australian brothers in South Australia, they were medical instrument makers, the Both brothers. And they looked at the design and went, yeah, that's great. We understand what it's doing. But I think we can do a better job. And they built it out of lightweight wood and put it on wheels and made the world's first portable respirator. So the Australian iron lung that then took off worldwide.
Wow.
And
because it is on wheels. It's got a little wheel platform here. It's not as big as you'd think of an iron lung. No. And hanging off the end here, we've got what looks like a giant pair of bellows, which it would be the breathing intake.
That's right. So that creates the vacuum inside the cabinet itself. Because, so they invented this in the 1930s in Adelaide when Australia had an outbreak of polio. And one of the things polio can do is that it paralyses your muscles. And if it paralyses your respiratory muscles, you can't breathe. Yeah. So people get inside this. The only thing popping out of the wooden box is their head. And then the bellows creates the vacuum inside the wooden box that pulls your chest up and down for you. So it's
amazing, isn't it?
It is. It's incredible.
It's just amazing. And to see one here and to know that that's what was happening inside. Poor people were lying there and their chest was being expanded and contracted because of the vacuum inside. And I've mentioned this on the Skeptic Zone before, but it's one of the things that's very sobering, that to see one, you have to go to a museum. And that's so important to remember. Yeah,
it is. And this is, again, Australian innovation that transformed people's lives, because you didn't recover from this very quickly. Some people spent months, years, the rest of their lives. These wheels, the lightweight box, meant that they could go home or they could be wheeled out into the sun. But lots of people lived for years in these things.
Just staggering to think.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm so pleased that it's part of the exhibition. Now we'll just keep walking down. Lots of kids running around here, which is really good to see. We're passing some microscopes. Oh, what a splendid selection of classic-looking microscopes, Tilly. There's some that I sort of remember from high school, but the brilliant old ones like you see in the old classic paintings of early scientists and things like that. Wow, what a collection. This looks like, next to it, looks like a leg caliper.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So polio.
So we've got an older leg caliper for a child, and then when you look up above it, you see prosthetics as they're made today for people who want to get
much simplified.
Yeah, much simplified and also less restrictive.
Yeah. Passing a collection of false teeth. What a set of choppers. Look at that. False teeth everywhere. It's fantastic.
Over here are two objects
what's this?
that were designed for one purpose and then used for another.
Ash grinder, it says here. Old Faithful.
Now, we didn't write Old Faithful on it, but so this machine was made and designed to grind coffee beans.
Right.
Then it was purchased by a crematorium.
Oh.
Because what they found was that when they burnt someone, when they cremated someone, the human body has, some...
Pretty tough, right?
Yeah, and so it didn't all end up into a fine powder. So they were handing back urns to people that sometimes rattled with a little bit of bone still remaining. And that's not a great experience.
We shouldn't laugh.
It's not a great experience for the family. So they made it a policy that after being cremated, people's remains were put through here so that they were consistent, so that they made sure that it came out as a fine powder for people to take home in an urn. So that's, one transformative design. The next one is one of my favourite.
Oh, goodness me. Folks, we're looking at a slab.
And beautiful, beautiful ceramic mortuary table.
Good
So
heavens, with little drains here for the bodily fluids, presumably.
Absolutely. So on the top of the slab, it has these beautiful runnels. So these beautiful ways of, and it's on a very slight tilt.
It looks like Art Deco, doesn't it?
It does. I think it's such a beautiful object. And then it has this a basin at the bottom, all made out of white ceramic. Perfect. So all the small hospitals used to do their own autopsies. And then in the 1950s, we centralised all the autopsies into one place, a coroner's. So all of the hospitals started smashing up. They didn't need these ceramic tables anymore, the mortuary tables. They weren't doing autopsies, so they just started disposing of them. This one nurse begged them not to smash this particular ceramic table up, and they dropped it at her house, and she used it for the next 40 years as a potting bench. Because look at it.
Yes, I can understand that. It's got drainage. It's got
It's got drainage. It doesn't get affected by the environmental elements. It's at the right height. It's a beautiful object to have in your backyard.
It's stunning. You could have it as a bar, couldn't you?
Oh,
I could see myself sitting at that to have a few drinks.
I think you just created a new event for us.
Oh, the things you have here, my goodness. All right, well, passing so many things. We can't talk about everything here, but there are so many things here, folks. It just goes on and on and on. Lots of bizarre-looking medical equipment and little packages of things, and there's a doll in there. Oh, we're being led down here. Oh, now,
you will.
Well, what do we have here?
So we have one area of this exhibition which is called Question It, and it is our case of historical and contemporary pseudoscience.
Goodness me.
So things that try to use the language of science but have no evidence, or make outrageous claims that can't be tested, or when tested are shown to be absolutely false. This is our way of tipping our hat to what we've had in the collection from a long time ago, and what are currently being used now.
Let's have a look at some of these. We start with the copper bracelet for rheumatism and all that sort of stuff, which is still sold in some chemist shops today, I can tell you.
A lot of this is still sold in chemist shops. One of our most recent examples is the amber necklace.
Amber teething necklace, how about that?
I've done the label that says, it defines it as used for placebo effect in parents during toddler teething. Which we've had someone photograph and tweet about, saying, what was it? I think the tweeter said that it was pleasantly blunt.
Now, I must say I'm quite chuffed, Tilly. I am quite chuffed, because if I look a little bit further in the cabinet, I can see something that I actually purchased myself.
That's right.
A few years back, we have the Ion Energy Band, and here it is in a museum. I love it. I love it. Next to it is a power balance band, too, which is really good to see.
Yeah, I just think that it's really important for us to document these incredibly
Questionable?
yeah, well, but also, you know, loads of people got involved in this. It was a big thing.
It's a huge thing.
And I think that's important for us to keep in our history.
You've got to remember that.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you've got some ear candles in the back. That's fantastic.
They are one of my personal favourite hated things.
Isn't it? They're amazing. And homeopathy. I'm absolutely delighted, folks. In fact, we might even...
And a crystal ball.
And a crystal... just above it. That's a beautiful crystal ball. We might get a snap of this for the archives too. This little display.
Oh, and aura goggles. Around the other side, we can go and have a look at them.
Let's have a look at the aura.
So they were...
Now, there's a transparent human at the end, but she's not looking too well. You can see right through her body.
She's doing all right for a 70-year-old.
Seriously, 70. Wow, that's impressive. And we just come around the other side. There's all sorts of pills here on display, other interesting medical devices. Aura goggles, Aura research kit. Good heavens.
Yeah, from the Metaphysical Research Group in the United Kingdom. They come with lovely goggles that look like pilot goggles.
I can see them now. They look just like old-fashioned World War I pilot goggles. That's right. Aura goggles. Oh, my goodness.
And then you slot in basically coloured cellophane.
Yes.
So that it helps you to distill people's colour aura. I'm not sure.
Yes.
But that's why they've earned their place right here in the
Brilliant.
question.
We've also got a phrenology head here, which is a classic thing. I've seen that many times. And what's this fascinating box here with all sorts of little instruments inside? What's this?
Yeah, it very much goes with the phrenology. Mm-hmm. It's a craniometer. So these...
I see. It fits around the head.
Yeah, and then it measures all of your bumps and then we'll know whether or not you're a criminal.
Of course. Folks, it's worth it to come here and look at this one cabinet here, which has the quackery and so on. It's so interesting, so interesting. I think we've got time for a few more things. We'll just walk down to the other side here. Again, passing wooden legs and what's in here? Wooden teeth or plastic teeth. Lots of teeth.
Eyes.
I've got to have a look at this. Oh, that is creepy. We have a little display box here full of eyes, all peeping out at us.
That's right.
I think, which one's like mine? The top right, I think.
Yes.
That's pretty, that's nightmare stuff, that is.
The leeches are just over to your right.
Oh, let's have a look over here. We're walking over now past a skeleton lying down. Oh, hello, we've got a little tank here, and it's a leech tank.
There's one. Just at the back in between the black and the plant.
Just straining now to see where these leeches are. They're a little bit hard to see because they are hidden away.
Stripy and black.
Stripy and black leech. Hiding in the corner there. And how often are they fed?
Well, they only have to be fed once a year, technically.
Once a year?
But because they're predators, I didn't think that was fair, because they're creatures in our care and they haven't got anything to hunt or to prey on. And so I was planning to feed them once a month. After the first time I fed them on my hands, I decided maybe once every 3 months would be all right. And then after the second time I fed them, which, by the way, it turns out leeches have variable skills. Some of them are really good at feeding. They do it quickly, cleanly, efficiently.
They're like babies, really, aren't they?
Yeah, and some of them are not so great. Yeah. But they've got 3 jaws that the bite mark that they leave on you is a perfect capital Y. And it is very... so it's the 3 jaws coming together. It's very clean. It doesn't itch, because the wonderful thing about aquatic leeches is that they have they use different. They're completely different to ones that you get when you're bushwalking, so they do not itch at all. And it only hurts while they are attaching, while they're ramming those 3 jaws through your flesh. As you're looking at them, is the only time that it hurts, but it's just like little needles.
You don't want to volunteer to be the blood giver, Frankie, do you?
No.
I can understand that. We're passing lots of skeletons here, lots of displays of bones, and it's a very bizarre baby in a womb here, but it looks like it was done by a 10-year-old. It's very bizarre.
It's called the obstetric phantom. So it is what was used to train male doctors about how to deliver babies without needing to have that inconvenient thing of a woman in the room.
And we're not looking at the business end of it either.
No, we're not. No, we're looking at it from the top, I must say. It's like a cross-section. Lots of models of internal bits of humour here. We've got the ear canal, done lovely. There's a heart just back there. Coming around here, more kids coming through, which is good to see. Hello, origami.
Oh, yes.
You should have told me.
Oh, I can't believe that I didn't. Yes, this is origami of a heart.
It's an origami
of a skull.
How cool is
come
that?
And get involved.
I'll have to come back and make some. That's really cool. And there are kids right now, as we speak, sitting at the table making origami hearts and skulls.
Yeah.
That is very cool indeed. And we're coming right down to the other end of the exhibition now, on the other side to where we were before. Lots of boxes and things from the 30s. I'm sure my mum would look at this cabinet and say, oh, yes, I remember all this sort of stuff. There's lots of soap here.
Yeah.
And I must say I'm quite surprised because you've got lots of varieties, very old soaps from the 20s, 30s, 40s maybe. It looks like it's all unused.
Yeah, absolutely. That's generally what museums do. We do our best to keep examples of things in their whole form, as well as a lot of these are just the boxes. So not their whole form.
That goanna oil. You must get people coming here of the older generation and just remembering lots of things that you have on display here.
Absolutely. Not only in this dispenser about chemists, but one section we didn't get to talk about was contraception.
Oh, right.
And we've got all these pills. And a lot of the time we have women standing there going, oh, I used to take that one. Oh, and I've done that one. Oh, Diane. Yep, that's been... So that's lovely as well. So all different generations have things to remember in terms of health and medicine.
Cool. Now, nearly at the end now, we've missed a lot here because we can't possibly see everything. There's far too much to see. Lots of more odd potions and pills here, but down the bottom we've got these 9 amazingly big blue bottles. And they look like something out of a movie proper. So I don't know what... We're just bending over to see what they are.
Yeah, so they were used by chemists to store large amounts of
huge.
Particular... Yeah.
They're huge big...
Potions.
They look great. It's like they're a work of art. They really are. More medical hacking and chopping and... all sorts of things here. We've got some old movies there showing on the wall.
Yeah, we've got some old ads showing things that right back... old aspirin ads, Panadol ads, Band-Aid ads, things that really will spark some memories for people.
The woman gulping down her Aspro, it says. And I noticed on the wall back there was a big thing for Bex.
Yeah.
Is Bex still on sale?
No, absolutely not.
Because when I was a kid, I remember the TV ads. It was, something, have a Bex. I can't remember how it went now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a cup of tea, a Bex, a cup of tea, and a good lie down. One of the components.
What's the story with Bex?
One of the components led to kidney shutdown.
Really?
I think. Yeah. I can't remember the name of it,
but
it
was a general pain relief.
Yeah,
okay.
It was, and it did very well at that. It's just that it was highly addictive, and it also damaged your kidneys.
I remember this one.
Yeah, of course you do. That's got the 80s all over it, Richard. I think
look at the pastel colours and the shoulder pads and the hair. But I remember watching this ad. Now, what's she advertising? I can't remember what she's advertising.
I think it'll be Panadol.
It must be there it is, Panadol. Yeah, she's holding up the tablet. Isn't that interesting when you see a TV commercial from 30 years ago and it's like you saw it yesterday? That's bizarre. YouTube's like that. You can spend hours looking at those. Not that I do. And that's cool. That's going on with advertising from going back
one
decades.
One last thing I desperately have to
right
show
down
you.
Nearly where we started from, and we're just coming to the last cabinet here. Hello.
Look at these.
That looks old.
Yeah, these are samples of penicillin from Howard Florey's laboratory.
Oh, wow.
So the Australian scientist who, with a collaborative team, was able to help isolate and produce the first antibiotic ever. We've got some of his samples.
That's
right
pretty cool.
Here. And his original report.
Wow, that's a huge historical importance.
I love him.
And a little display here. And
these are saviours, so things that have had giant leaps forward. Vaccination, for example.
Let's have a look over here.
Recollect
Oh, hang on, wait a minute. There you are on the big screen.
Yeah.
That's your voice in the background there.
I know, I apologise. Now we're competing with me.
It's all right. We'll ignore you and talk to you. And yes, there's a little 1958. It says here, little vaccination leaflet, little brochure there. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and a lancet and comb for vaccinations.
Wow.
And vaccination needles for smallpox.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, let's pop around the corner here, out of the sound of your voice. And we're right back to where we started from, and there's an old, it's an ambulance from the 70s or the 80s here, the ones that I certainly remember. Well, Tilly and Frankie, thank you so much for accompanying me around this fantastic exhibition. Now, how long is it here for? Tilly, remind us.
It's on for another few months. It'll wrap up in May, so make sure you come and have a look.
And this is at the Sydney's Powerhouse Museum, which is not far from downtown Sydney if you're coming internationally. It's just near a tram stop too. It's on all the tourist brochures, very easy to Google, Powerhouse Museum. Absolutely worthwhile to come and spend a few hours looking at this wonderful display of medical memorabilia.
Isaac Asimov, Jules Verne and H.G. Wells are some of the classic names of science fiction. So let's take a look at how they thought the future was going to turn out. In 1865, Jules Verne seemingly predicted solar sails, massive sails that could propel a spacecraft using radiation from the sun. In 1864, the scientific community knew that light from the sun carried momentum and exerted forces on objects. In his book, From the Earth to the Moon, Jules extrapolated that knowledge to suggest that light could be used to push a spacecraft. In 2010, the Japanese Space Agency deployed and used a solar sail. He also seemingly predicted video conferencing, FaceTime and Skype. In his book, In the Year 2889, he predicted that telephones would have moving images, and he called this device the phonotelephone. In 1964, Isaac Asimov correctly predicted that by 2014, only robotic missions to Mars will have been accomplished, but that a human mission would be in the planning stages. Hello, Mars One. Asimov also predicted that by 2014, robots would exist, but would be neither common or very good. He also suggested that machines would have taken over many routine human jobs. H.G. Wells, best known for his work War of the Worlds, correctly predicted in 1913 the atomic bomb, which could decimate cities. It would cause mushroom clouds and result in radioactive fallout. All of this 30 years before the Manhattan Project. They didn't get everything right, however, and here are 4 scientific predictions that proved a little wide of the mark. Asimov predicted in 1964 that by 2014, experimental nuclear fusion power plants would be in existence. Asimov also suggested that there would be a permanent moon colony and possibly deep-sea underwater colonies as well. Despite Jules Verne's surprisingly accurate descriptions of the Apollo moon landings, he did also suggest the capsule would be fired from a huge gun, which, if built in reality, would cause an unsurvivable acceleration of 1000 G. And Arthur C. Clarke predicted that with the rise of technology, no one would travel to work, but they would travel for pleasure. Unfortunately, that hasn't panned out. Want to find out more about predictions from science fiction? Check out our website where we've got some links. And I'll see you back here next week.
As reported in the Sydney Morning Herald, 24th of January 2016, national psychic TV show forced off air after threats to celebrity clairvoyance. And they don't even use the words so-called or put them in quotation marks or anything like that. Now, Psychic TV has been on air for a few years now. It's a program recorded, or it's transmitted live, I think. Yes, transmitted live from a studio in French's Forest. Now, I have met some of the so-called psychics that appear on Psychic TV. I bump into them at Mind Body Wallet. I've sort of known them along the years. What they tell me about it is very interesting, of course. Now, there's no two ways about this. This is a way to promote a 24-hour telephone psychic reading service, which is something like $5.45 per minute. It's something that goes on all around the world. Dial a Psychic. You can see them on the backs of magazines and things like that. But this one, however, is interesting because they have a number of psychics in the studio. Most of them are taking calls on the 1-800 numbers, the pay numbers. But they'll bring up one who will answer queries live on air. But not really. What they do is they'll play a recording, a voice message from somebody or a message sent in by email and says, hello, I'm Fred or I'm Joan. My birth date is so-and-so, set 1973. Can I get a general life and love reading or something like that? And that's the last you hear of them. Then it's up to the so-called psychic to spread the tarot cards or scribble something on numerology charts or something like that. And then after that, they go and ah, or talk to spirit or ghosts or whatever. And then just deliver a series of what we know as Barnum statements. It's pretty textbook stuff, pretty easy stuff. They don't have to do interaction live on air with anybody who calls in. That's sort of done privately. To give you a taste, here's a little sample of a typical session.
Now, we have a whole team of psychics here at Psychic TV, and they're available to you on option 5, and they're available 24 hours a day. So we've got our at-home psychics, so please give us a call if you would like to speak to one of them. You can press option 5 and dial the 1-800 number or the 1-900 number on the screen and follow the prompts and press option 5 if you'd like to speak to one of our at-home psychics. So in the meantime, we have a voice message for you, Eva.
Another one. Gee, you spoiled me. Thanks, guys.
Hi, my name is Veronica, 25th of the 6th, 57. I would like the answer to 2 questions.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to meet a new soul partner soon. I feel I am.
Oh, yeah.
Could you tell me, if you can, how I'm going to meet him? And my second question is, will my problems at work be resolved soon, or should I look for another job? Thank you very much. Blessings to all.
Thank you very much for your voicemail message, Veronica. So she's got the feeling that she's going to meet her soulmate in soon, but she wants to know how she's going to meet him.
Fingers and toes. Got to be careful with the how, because the universe is in charge of the how and the universe is in charge of when. So we need to leave that pretty much to the universe. I don't get you need to go night clubbing or anything like that. It does feel that this person's going to feel like this person's actually going to come to you naturally, normally. I have a lot of people say to me, yeah, but I never go out, I never do this, I never do that. What, you never go to the shops, you never go to the newsagents, you never walk up the street? When the time is right, and it doesn't feel like it is, because it feels like you're kind of walking around the corner going, I wonder if that's them, I wonder if that's them, I wonder if that's them. That actually, yeah, it gets in the way, because the more we need something, the more we want something, it's kind of the more we push it away. So what's going to happen, it's kind of like they're saying the when is actually when you're just focusing on doing what it is you're doing and not even caring about whether anyone else is there, and it's like all of a sudden it feels like there's a tap on the shoulder, and with that tap on the shoulder, it's the last thing you expect, and it's a really, really nice surprise. It does feel like definitely sooner rather than later. As you know, it's within 2 months. And it's actually quite funny, because you guys, you see me, I shuffle these cards all the time, and I'm shuffling, and 2 of the same cards have come out again. So it's definitely on its way. We've got Triumph out there for you. Spiritual Union has come up as well, because this person is on the same wavelength as you. And it's that meeting of the minds. It's kind of like someone you can trust on all levels, someone that you have a great connection with. And I'm getting getting sore sides and sore cheeks from laughing so much, and both of you, it's just you light up each other's life, and it's absolutely fabulous. Enjoy enjoy with delight the feeling that it's coming, and enjoy that feeling, because that'll bring it quicker to you.
So as you can hear, this is really what we call Barnum statements. It's just pretty low-level stuff. But I would strongly suspect most of the so-called psychics that appear on this probably genuinely believe that they do have special psychic powers. Many of them do. Now, I can't say that for sure. I mean, undoubtedly there are the sharks and the cons out there who know full well they don't have special psychic powers, but they certainly know an easy gig when they come across one. But many of them, yes, really do believe that as they gaze across their tarot deck, or they scribble on their numerology charts doing mathematics, which would thrill even Einstein, I'm sure, that they really are delivering mystical, magical messages. But that doesn't detract, as one commenter has remarked and reminded us, that doesn't detract. At the end of the day, what they're doing is not real. It's giving bogus messages. There is this term out there called grief vampires, which refers to people who prey on people's grief to make money, which some psychics do, especially those who know full well what they're doing is a con, a fraud, a game. But I think that really, ultimately, this is a question of consumer affairs. Now, I think, and I'm pretty sure, that during the program, there's a crawl at the bottom of the screen, and somewhere along the crawl or in the credits it'll say for entertainment purposes only. Really? Do the people on that show really believe they're doing it just for entertainment purposes only? No! Most of them think they're really getting special mystical messages to help people. But regardless, yes, surely it's something for consumer affairs, but I don't think consumer affairs really cares about psychics and psychic claims and things like this. Mind Body Wallet is a great example. You don't see investigators from the government there checking out the bona fides or the claims being made. I don't think they really take them seriously. Nevertheless, to get back to the gist of the story, it's been reported that these so-called psychics have been receiving abuse online or even threats, and somebody is quoted as saying, well, maybe the cast needs to be abused. I mean, you're ripping people off. The people who follow this show are just poorly educated or in a bad spot in their life at the moment. Either way, they're vulnerable. This show is shameless. Well, in a way, yes, the show is shameless. It's basically a business. But the correct path here is to expose the Barnum statements for what they are, and ultimately to go through consumer affairs for people peddling a product which does not live up to the claims. Now, what I'll do in the show notes for this episode is I'll link to some videos of Psychic TV so you can get a better idea. Or you just Google Psychic TV Australia and that'll come up in YouTube. So an odd story coming out of Australia. I do not condone people using threats of violence against psychics. I don't think these people are psychic for one moment. But that does not mean people have the right to threaten and abuse people online in this manner. It's so counterproductive. It's so incredibly counterproductive. And this is what a lot of the anti-vaccination people have been doing for many years, is abusing and threatening people, harassing people. It hasn't helped their cause. So there you go. Psychic TV. I wonder if they saw this coming.
Hej svenska skeptiker! Du vet väl att vetenskap och folkbildning inte bara är trogna anhängare av The Skeptic Zone utan också arrangerar föredrag, pop-science-quiz och skeptikerträffar runt om i Sverige. Gå in på www.vof.se för att spana in vad våra 7 olika lokalföreningar runt om i landet har på gång. Och om du bor i en stad där det inte finns någon lokalförening, varför inte starta en själv? Jag pratar med dig, Umeå. Hello all skeptics in Sweden! I'm sure you already know that the Swedish Skeptics Association not only is a big fan of the Skeptic Zone, but that we also organize lectures, pop science quiz and skeptics in the pub all over the country. Go to www.vof.se to see what our 7 local chapters are up to. And if you live in a place where there is no local chapter, why not start one yourself? I'm talking to you, Umeå.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Coming up next week, I hope to have some reports, as mentioned earlier in the show, about the continuing fallout about the awarding of the PhD to an anti-vaxxer, the Chiropractic Board of Australia under fire, and Mark Zuckerberg and his daughter. Thank you to those people who help the Skeptic Zone by subscribing via PayPal, and you can do that via our website at www.skepticzone.tv. And news has just come in that the next Australian Skeptics National Convention, which will be in Melbourne, looks like being held towards the end of November. I think the tentative dates, or the dates, are the 25th to the 27th. We'll certainly be confirming that and talking more about that convention in the coming months. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter @SkepticZone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation.